Opposed, the three sons threw dice for his empire. Zeus, the youngest, won and chose the sky. Poseidon smiled to himself because the sky was empty, and he knew that the impulsive Zeus had chosen it because it looked so high. And now he, Poseidon, could choose as he would have done if he had won. He chose the sea. He'd always wanted it. It's the best place for adventures and secrets, and makes claim on land and sky. Hades, who was always unlucky, had to take the underworld. The earth was held as a commonwealth and left to the goddesses to manage. Poseidon left Olympus and came to his kingdom. He immediately set about building a huge underwater palace with a great pearl and coral throne. He needed a queen and chose Thetis, a beautiful nereid or water nymph. But it was prophesied that any son born to Thetis would be greater than his father, so Poseidon decided to try elsewhere. The prophecy came true. The son of Thetis was Achilles. Poseidon chose another nereid named Amphitrite. But like his brother Zeus, he was a great traveler and had hundreds of children in different places. He was a very difficult god, changeful and quarrelsome. He did bear grudges, but he could be pleased, and then his smile was radiant. He liked jokes and thought up very curious forms for his creatures. He liked to startle nymphs with monsters and concocted the octopus, the squid, the sea polyp or jellyfish, the swordfish, blowfish, sea cow, and many others. Once, trying to appease Amphitrite's jealous rage, he thought up the dolphin and gave it to her as a gift. He was greedy and aggressive, always trying to add to his kingdom. Once he claimed Attica as his own and stabbed his trident into the hillside where the Acropolis still stands and a spring of salt water spouted. Now, the people of Athens did not want to belong to the kingdom of the sea. They were afraid of Poseidon, who had a habit of seizing all the youth of the town when he was in the mood. So they prayed to be put under the protection of another god. Athena heard their prayers. She came down and planted an olive tree by the side of the spring. Poseidon was enraged. His face darkened, and he roared with fury, raising a storm. A fishing fleet was blown off the sea and never came to port. He challenged Athena to single combat and threatened to stir up a tidal wave to break over the city if she refused. She accepted. But Zeus heard the sound of this quarreling and came down and decreed a truce. Then all the gods sat in council to hear the rival claims. After hearing both Athena and Poseidon, they voted to award the city to Athena because her olive tree was the better gift. After that, Athenians had to be very careful when they went to sea and were often unfortunate in their naval battles. Poseidon was very fond of Demeter and pursued her hotly whenever he thought about it. He cornered her finally one hot afternoon in a mountain pass and demanded that she love him. She didn't know what to do. He was so huge, so implacable, so persistent. Finally, Demeter said, "Give me a gift. You have made creatures for the sea. Now make me a land animal, but a beautiful one, the most beautiful ever seen." She thought she was safe because she believed he could make only monsters. She was amazed when he made her a horse and gasped with delight when she saw it. And Poseidon was so struck by his handiwork that he swiftly made a herd of horses that began to gallop about the meadow, tossing their heads, flirting their tails, kicking up their back legs, and neighing joyously. And he was so fascinated by the horses that he forgot all about Demeter and leaped on one and rode off. Later, he made another herd of green ones for his undersea stables. But Demeter kept the first herd, and from that, all the horses in the world have descended. Another story says it took Poseidon a full week to make the horse. During that time, he made and cast aside many other creatures that didn't come out right. But he simply threw them away without killing them, and they made their way into the world. From them have come the camel, the hippopotamus, the giraffe, the donkey, and the zebra. In another story, Demeter turned herself into a mare to escape Poseidon. But he immediately changed himself into a stallion, galloped after her, and caught her. From this courtship came a wild horse, Arion, and the nymph named Despoina. Demeter was also a moon goddess, and all through mythology there is a connection between horse and moon and sea. The she-horse is given a sea name, Mare. The moon swings the tides, the waves have white manes, the dripping horses stamp on the beach, and their hooves leave moon-shaped marks. An old, old thing that has not entirely disappeared. Hephaestus. No one celebrated the birth of Hephaestus. His mother Hera had awaited him with great eagerness, hoping for a child so beautiful, so gifted, that it would make Zeus forget his heroic swarm of children from lesser consorts. But when the baby was born, she was appalled to see that he was shriveled and ugly, with an irritating, bleating wail. She did not wait for Zeus to see him, but snatched the infant up and hurled him off Olympus. For a day and a night he fell, and hit the ground at the edge of the sea with such force that both of his legs were broken. He lay there on the beach, mewing piteously, unable to crawl, racked with pain, but unable to die because he was immortal. Finally, the tide came up. A huge wave curled him under its arm and carried him off to sea, and there he sank like a stone and was caught by the playful Thetis, a naiad, who thought he was a tadpole. When Thetis understood it was a baby she had caught, she made a pet of him and kept him in her grotto. She was amazed at the way the crippled child worked shells and bright pebbles into jewelry. One day she appeared at a great festival of the gods, wearing a necklace he had made. Hera noticed the ornament and praised it, and asked her how she had come by it. Thetis told her of the strange, twisted child whom someone had dropped into the ocean, and who lived now in her cave making wonderful jewels. Hera divined it was her own son, and demanded him back. Hephaestus returned to Olympus. There Hera presented him with a broken mountain nearby, where he could set up forges and bellows. She gave him the brawny Cyclopes to be his helpers, and promised him Aphrodite as a bride, if he would labor in the mountain and make her fine things. Hephaestus agreed, because he loved her, and excused her cruelty to him. "I know that I am ugly, mother," he said, "but the fates would have it so. And I will make you gems so beautiful for your tapering arms and white throat and black hair that you will forget my ugliness sometimes and rejoice that you have taken me back from the sea." He became the smith god, the great artificer, lord of mechanics, and the mountain always smoked and rumbled with his toil. And he has always been very ugly and very useful. Hermes. Young gods were often precocious, but no one so much as Hermes, who, 5 minutes after his birth, sneaked out of his crib and went searching for adventure. He toddled swiftly down the slope of Mount Cyllene until he came to a meadow where he saw a herd of beautiful white cows grazing. He saw no cowherd and decided to steal them. A tree full of crows began to seethe and whistle. "They belong to Apollo, to Apollo, Apollo." But he paid them no heed. He plaited grass into shoes for the cows and fitted them over their hooves and drove them away. When Apollo returned, he was furious to see his cows gone, and even more furious when he searched for tracks and found none, only odd sweeping marks on the ground. The crows chattered, "A baby stole them. Your brother, your brother." But this made no sense to Apollo. Besides, he did not trust crows. He did not know where to begin looking. He searched far and wide, but could find no clue. Then one morning, he passed a cave he had passed 100 times before. But this time, he heard strange, beautiful sounds coming out of it, sounds unlike anything he had ever heard before. And he looked inside. There, drowsing by the fire, was a tall, lovely Titaness named Maia, whom he had seen before in the garden on Olympus. Sitting in her lap was a little baby boy, doing something to a large tortoise shell, from which the strange sounds seemed to be coming. "Good day, cousin," said Apollo. "Are you to be congratulated on a new son?" "Hail, bright Phoebus," said Maia. "May I have the honor of presenting your half-brother, young Hermes." "Half-brother, eh? Well, that's an honor without being a distinction. What's that he's playing with?" "He makes his own toys," said Maia proudly. "He's so clever you can't imagine. He made this out of an old shell that he strung with cow gut, and from it he draws the most ravishing sounds. Listen." "Cow gut? May I ask what cow he persuaded to contribute her vital chords for his pastime?" "I do not understand your question, cousin." "Understand this, cousin. I have had a herd of cows stolen recently. The crows told me they had been taken by some baby, my brother, but I didn't believe them. I seem to owe them an apology." "What?" cried Maia. "Are you accusing the innocent babe of being a cattle thief? For shame." "Mother, if you don't mind," said a clear little voice, "perhaps you'd better let me handle this." The baby stood on his mother's knee and bowed to Apollo. "I did take your cows, brother, but I didn't know they were yours. How could I have? And they are quite safe except for one. Wishing to begin my life with an act of piety, I sacrificed her to the 12 gods. 12 gods? Said Apollo haughtily. I am acquainted with but 11. Yes, sir, said Hermes, but I have the honor to be the 12th. Above all things, I wish your goodwill, fair brother. So, in return for this cow, allow me to make you a present. This instrument. I call it a lyre. I'll be glad to teach you to play. Apollo was enchanted with the trade. He stayed in the cave all that afternoon, practicing his scales. As he was strumming his new toy, he noticed Hermes cutting reeds, which the child swiftly tied together, notched in a certain way, then put to his lips and began to make other sounds, even more beautiful than the lyre could produce. What's that? Cried Apollo. What do you call that? I want that too. I don't need any more cows, said Hermes. I must have it. What else of mine do you wish? Your golden staff. But this is my herdsman's staff. Do you not know that I am the god of herdsmen, and that this is the rod of authority? A minor office, said Hermes, unworthy of the Lord of the Sun. Perhaps you would allow me to take over this chore. Give me your golden staff, and I will give you these pipes. Agreed, agreed. But, since pipes and lyre together will make you god of music, I must have something to boot. Teach me augury. You drive a hard bargain for a nursling, said Apollo. I think you belong on Olympus, brother. This cave will not long offer scope for your talents. Oh, yes, take me there, cried Hermes. I'm eager to meet Father Zeus. So Apollo took Hermes to Olympus and introduced him to his father. Zeus was intrigued by the wit and impudence of the child. He hid him away from Hera and spent hours conversing with him. You say you wish to enter the Pantheon, said Zeus. But really, all the realms and powers seem to have been parceled out. Father, I am of a modest nature, said Hermes. I require no vast dignities, only a chance to be useful, to serve you, and to dwell in your benign and potent presence. Let me be your herald. Let me carry your tidings. You will find me quick and resourceful, and what I can't remember I will make up. And I guarantee your subjects will get the message. Very well, said Zeus. I will give you a trial. So Hermes became the messenger god and accomplished his duties with such swiftness, ingenuity, and cheerfulness that he became a favorite of his father, who soon rewarded him with other posts. Hermes became patron of liars and thieves and gamblers, god of commerce, framer of treaties, and guardian of travelers. Hades became his client too, and called upon him to usher the newly dead from earth to Tartarus. He kept a workshop on Olympus, and there invented the alphabet, astronomy, and the scales, also playing cards and card games. He carried Apollo's golden staff, decorated with white ribbons, wore a pot-shaped hat, and winged sandals which carried him through the air more swiftly than any bird could fly. It was he who gave Zeus the idea of disguising himself and mingling with mortals when bored with Olympus. He joined his father in this, and they had many adventures together.
Artemis. Father Zeus was by no means an attentive parent. He had so many children in so many different circumstances, he could scarcely keep them all in mind. However, he was not permitted to forget Leto's children. They were too beautiful, and beauty was the quality he found most attractive. As he looked down from Olympus, their faces seemed to blaze from among all the children on earth. It seemed to him that they cast their own light, these twins, each one different. Apollo a ruddy light, Artemis a silver light, and he knew that they were true godlings and must be brought to Olympus. He sent for them on their 3rd birthday. He had HEPHAESTUS make Apollo a golden bow and a quiver of golden arrows that could never be emptied, and a golden chariot drawn by golden ponies. But he withheld Artemis's gifts. He preferred her, and he wanted her to ask him for things. He took her on his lap and said, "And what gifts would you fancy, little maid?" She said, "I wish to be your maiden, always, never a woman. And I want many names in case I get bored with one. I want a bow and arrow too, but silver, not gold. I want an embroidered deerskin tunic short enough to run in. I need 50 ocean nymphs to sing for me and 20 wood nymphs to hunt with me. And I want a pack of hounds, please. Fierce, swift ones. I want the mountains for my special places. And one city. One will be enough. I don't like cities." She reached up and played with his beard and smiled at him. "Yes? May I have all these things? May I?" Zeus answered, "For a child like you, it is worthwhile braving Hera's wrath once in a while. You shall have more than you ask for. You shall have the gift of eternal chastity, and also the gift of changing your mind about it at any time, which will help you not to want to. And finally, the greatest gift of all, you shall go out and choose your own gifts so that they will have a special value." She kissed him and whispered her thanks into his ear, and then went running off to choose her gifts. She went to the woods and to the river and to the ocean stream, and selected the most beautiful nymphs for her court. She visited HEPHAESTUS in his smoking smithy inside the mountain, and said, "I've come for my bow, a silver one, please." He said, "Silver is more difficult to work than gold. It needs cool light. It should be made under water. You must go deep beneath the sea, off the island of Lipara, where my Cyclops are making a horse trough for Poseidon, who thinks of nothing but horses these days." So Artemis and her nymphs swam underwater to where the Cyclops were hammering at a great trough. The nymphs were frightened at the sight of the huge, one-eyed, scowling brutes, and they hated the noise of the hammering. But Artemis jumped up on the forge and said, "I come with a message from HEPHAESTUS. He bids you put aside this horse trough and make me a silver bow and a quiver of silver arrows, which will fill again as soon as it is empty. If you do this, I shall give you the first game I shoot." The Cyclops, who were very greedy and tired of working on the horse trough, agreed. When they had finished her bow, she thanked them very prettily, but when their leader, Brontes, tried to take her on his knee, she tore a great handful of hair from his chest. He put her down quickly and went away cursing. Holding her silver bow high, screaming with joy, she raced across field and valley and hill, followed by her nymphs, who streamed after her with flashing knees and floating hair, laughing and singing. She came to Arcadia, where Pan was feeding his hounds. "Oh, Pan," she cried, "oh, little king of the wood, my favorite cousin, please give me some of your dogs, the best ones, please." "And what will you give me in return?" he said, looking at the nymphs. "Choose," she said, "but I should warn you, cousin, that like me, they have taken an unbreakable vow of chastity." "Never mind," said Pan, "keep them. What dogs do you fancy?" "That one, and that one, and that one," she cried, "and this one, and I must have him, and him." He gave her his 10 best dogs. 3 of them were huge black and white hounds, able to catch a live lion and drag it back to the hunter. The others were lean white deer hounds. Any one of them could outrun a stag. Artemis was wild to try out her new gifts. She sent her white hounds racing after 2 deer, bidding them bring back the animals unharmed. She harnessed the deer to her silver chariot and drove away. She saw a tree which had been struck by lightning. It was still smoldering. She had her nymphs break pine branches and thrust them into the cinders, for night was coming and she wanted light to shoot by. She was too impatient to wait for dawn. 4 times she shot her silver bow. First she split a pine tree, then an olive tree. Then she shot a wild boar. Lastly, she shot an arrow into a city of unjust men, and the arrow pierced all of them, never ceasing its flight till they were all dead. And the people, seeing her ride over the mountains, wielding her silver bow, followed by the maidens and their torches, called her the goddess of the moon. Some called her the maiden of the silver bow. Others called her lady of the wild things. Some called her the huntress, others simply the maiden. And so she had her last gift, many names. She let no man approach her. Once a young man named Actaeon glimpsed her bathing in a stream. She was so beautiful he could not bear to go away, but hid there watching. She saw him and immediately changed him into a stag. Then she whistled up her hounds, who tore him to pieces. She tried to impose the same rule upon her nymphs, which was difficult. Zeus himself seduced one of the most beautiful, named Callisto. When Artemis learned of this, she changed Callisto into a she-bear and whistled to her dogs. They came leaping and howling and would have torn the bear to pieces too. But Zeus happened to notice what was going on. He caught Callisto up and set her among the stars, still in her bear shape, so that Hera would not be suspicious. Once Artemis found her vow difficult to keep. But that is another story.
Apollo. Apollo was the most beautiful of the gods. His hair was dark gold, his eyes stormy blue. He wore a tunic of golden panther skin, carried his golden bow, and wore a quiver of golden arrows. His chariot was beaten gold. Its horses were white with golden manes and flame-colored eyes. He was god of the sun always. Later he became patron of music, poetry, mathematics, and medicine. And later, when he was a mature god, he preached moderation. He bade his worshippers to look first into their own hearts and find there the beginnings of wisdom, and to conduct themselves prudently in all things. But in his youth he did many cruel and wanton deeds. Several times he was almost expelled from the company of the gods by Zeus, whom he had angered with his wild folly. As soon as he was given his bow and arrows, he raced down from Olympus to hunt the python who had hunted his mother. Dryads, who are tattletales, told him he could find his enemy at Mount Parnassus. There he sped. As he stood on a hill, he saw the great serpent weaving its dusty coils far below. He notched an arrow, drew his bow, and let fly. It darted like light, He saw it strike, saw the huge coils flail in agony. Shouting with savage glee, he raced down the slope. But when he got there, he found the serpent gone. It had left a trail of blood, which he followed to the oracle of Mother Earth at Delphi. Python was hiding in a cave where he could not be followed. Apollo breathed on his arrowheads and shot them into the cave as fast as he could. They broke into flames when they hit. Smoke filled the cave, and the serpent had to crawl out. Apollo, standing on a rock, shot him so full of arrows he looked like a porcupine. He skinned the great snake and saved the hide for a gift. Now, it was a sacred place where he had done his killing. Here lived the oracles of Mother Earth, whom the gods themselves consulted. They were priestesses, trained from infancy. They chewed laurel, built fire of magic herbs, and sat in the smoke, which threw them into a trance, wherein they saw and told in riddles what was to come. Knowing that he had already violated a shrine, Apollo thought he might as well make his deed as large as possible, and claimed the oracles for his own, bidding them to prophesy in his name. When Mother Earth complained to Zeus about the killing of her python, Apollo smoothly promised to make amends. He instituted annual games at Delphi in celebration of his victory, and these he graciously named after his enemy, calling them the Pythian Games, and he named the oracles Pythonesses. Less excusable was Apollo's treatment of a satyr named Marsyas. This happy fellow had the misfortune to be an excellent musician, a realm Apollo considered his own, and where he would brook no rivalry. Hearing the satyr praised too often, Apollo invited him to a contest. The winner was to choose a penalty to which the loser would have to submit, and the muses were to judge. So Marsyas played his flute, and Apollo played his lyre. They played exquisitely. The muses could not choose between them. Then Apollo shouted, "Now you must turn your instrument upside down and play and sing at the same time. That is the rule. I go first." Thereupon the god turned his lyre upside down and played and sang a hymn praising the gods, and especially their beautiful daughters, the muses. But you cannot play a flute upside down, and certainly cannot sing while playing it. So Marsyas was declared the loser. Apollo collected his price. He flayed Marsyas alive and nailed his skin to a tree. A stream gushed from the tree's roots and became a river. On the banks of that river grew reeds, which sang softly when the wind blew. People called the river Marsyas, and that is still its name. Sons of Apollo. During the contests with the satyr, Marsyas, Apollo won the favor of the most playful muse, Thalia, queen of festivities. With her he fathered the Corybantes, or crested dancers, lithe young men who shaved their hair to a forelock and danced at great rituals. Then, roaming the hillsides, he came across a young girl who reminded him of his sister. She was a huntress. She chased deer on foot, hunted bears and wolves. When he saw her wrestling a full-grown lion and throwing it to earth, he decided he must have her. Her name was Cyrene. The son he gave her was named Aristeus, who taught man beekeeping, olive culture, cheese-making, and many other useful arts. His next adventure was with the nymph Dryope. He found her tending sheep on a mountainside. He hid behind a tree and watched her. To his dismay, she was joined by a gaggle of hamadryads, mischievous girls who loved to tell tales. So he had to stay hidden. He waited for the hamadryads to leave, but they lingered. Gods are impatient. They hate to be kept waiting. He changed himself into a tortoise and crawled out. The nymphs were delighted to see him, and turned him this way and that and tickled him with a straw. He was a splendid, glossy tortoise with a beautiful black and green shell. Dryope wanted him for her own and put him in her tunic. When her friends protested, he turned himself into a snake, poked his head out of the tunic, and hissed at them. The Hamadryads fled, screaming. Dryope fainted. When she came to, she was in the arms of a god. The son he gave her was Amphisus, founder of cities and builder of temples. But his most famous son was Asclepius. This was the manner of his birth. Apollo fell in love with Coronis, a princess of Thessaly, and insisted on having his way, which was unwise of him, because she loved an Arcadian prince named Iscus. When she was with child, Apollo went on a journey, but sent a white crow to spy on her. All crows were white then, and were excellent chaperones. They had sharp eyes and jeering voices. It was to Delphi that Apollo had gone. An oracle there told him that at that very moment Coronis was entertaining young Iscus. Just then the crow flew in, wildly excited, full of scandal, telling the same tale. "Your fault! You did not watch her closely enough," cried Apollo. And he cursed the crow with a curse so furious that her feathers were scorched. And all crows have been black ever since. Apollo could not bring himself to kill Coronis, so he asked his sister Artemis to oblige him. She was happy to. She was never fond of his amours. She sped to Thessaly and finished Coronis with one arrow. Apollo, very dejected, put the corpse on the funeral pyre and lighted the fire. Then he remembered that she was with child by him. Hermes was now standing by, waiting to conduct her soul to Tartarus, for that was one of his duties. Understanding the situation in a flash, he delivered the dead girl of a living child, a boy. Apollo wished to have nothing to do with the child, and asked Hermes to take care of him. Hermes had been struck by the way the baby had observed the details of his own birth, watching everything with a wide stare, so interested he forgot to cry, and recognized that this was an unusual child. So he gave him into the care of Chiron, the centaur, the fabulous tutor. Chiron taught him diagnostics, surgery, herbology, and hunting. The boy could not wait to grow up. He doctored everyone he could get his hands on, and he was soon known throughout the land for his skill at curing the sick. His fame reached Apollo, who decided to test him. He appeared at Asclepius's door in the guise of a feeble old man, afflicted with every loathsome disease known to medicine, and a pauper besides. Asclepius tended him with his own hands, and was so gentle and skillful that Apollo was amazed. The god resumed his own form and embraced the lad, and told him he was pleased with his progress. He sent him to see his aunt, Athena, who, he said, knew certain secrets of mortality. She too approved of the young man, and gave him 2 vials of Gorgon blood. One vial could raise the dead. The other was the deadliest poison ever known. "No, aunt," he said. "I need only the first vial. You keep the other." Some say that it was by his own skill that he restored life to the dead, and that Athena was simply trying to take some of the credit for herself. Be that as it may, he did snatch several patients from the very gates of Tartarus, and Hades was enraged. He complained to his brother Zeus that Asclepius was robbing him. Zeus stood on Olympus, hurled a thunderbolt, and killed the young physician, together with the patient he was tending. When Apollo heard about this, he went into one of his wild, heedless rages, stormed to Olympus, battered in the doors of Hephaestus' smithy, and there slew all the Cyclopes who had forged the thunderbolt which had killed his son. When Zeus heard this, he banished Apollo to Tartarus forever. But Mother Leto came and pleaded with him, reminding him of their old love. She spoke so beautifully that Zeus relented, withdrew the edict of Apollo's banishment, and even agreed to bring Asclepius back to life. But he suggested that Asclepius be more tactful about his cures and avoid offending the gods. When Aphrodite heard this story, she was bitten by envy. She considered herself a favorite of Zeus, but he had never done so much for her. Her heart was bitter against Apollo, and she wanted to do him a mischief. She called her son, Eros, the infant archer, whose sweetly poisoned arrows infect man and woman with a most dangerous fever. She told him what she wanted. Eros had two kinds of arrows, one tipped with gold and tailed with white dove feathers. These were for love. The others, made of lead with brown owl feathers, were the arrows of indifference. He took up his bow and stalked his game. Apollo, he knew, was hunting, and so he made Apollo's path cross that of Daphne, a mountain nymph, daughter of the river god, Peneus. Then, fluttering above them, invisible, he shot Apollo with the dart of love and Daphne with the arrow of indifference. When the golden god came running down the slope toward the nymph, he saw her start up and run away. He could not understand it. She fled. The god pursued. She was a very swift runner, but great footsteps pounded behind her, and she felt the heat of his breath on her shoulders. She ran toward the river and cried, "Oh, Father, save me! Save me!" Her father heard. Apollo, reaching for her, found himself hugging a tree. The rough bark scratched his face. He said, "But why? Why do you hate me so?" The wind blew through the leaves, and they whispered, "I don't know. I don't know." But then the tree took pity on the grieving god and gave him a gift, a wreath of her leaves, laurel leaves, that would never wither, to crown heroes and poets and young men who win games. And still today, when questioned by losers, laurel trees whisper, "I don't know. I don't know."
Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and beauty, so there are more stories told about her than anyone else, god or mortal. Being what she is, she enters other stories, and such is the power of her magic girdle that he who even speaks her name falls under her spell and seems to glimpse her white shoulders and catch the perfume of her golden hair. And he loses his wits and begins to babble and tells the same story in many ways. But all the tales agree that she is the goddess of desire, and unlike other Olympians, is never distracted from her duties. Her work is her pleasure, her profession, her hobby. She thinks of nothing but love, and nobody expects more of her. She was born out of the primal murder. When Cronus butchered his father Orenos with the scythe his mother had given him, he flung the dismembered body off Olympus into the sea, where it floated, spouting blood and foam, which drifted whitening in the sun. From the foam rose a tall, beautiful maiden, naked and dripping. Waves attended her. Poseidon's white horses brought her to the island of Cythera. Wherever she stepped, the sand turned to grass and flowers bloomed. Then she went to Cyprus. Hillsides burst into flowers, and the air was full of birds. Zeus brought her to Olympus. She was still dripping from the sea. She wore nothing but the bright tunic of her hair, which fell below her knees and was yellow as daffodils. She looked about the great throne room where the gods were assembled to meet her, arched her throat, and laughed with joy. Hera was watching Zeus narrowly. "You must marry her off," she whispered, "at once, without delay." "Yes," said Zeus, "some sort of marriage would seem to be indicated." And he said, "Brothers, sons, cousins, Aphrodite is to be married. She will choose her own husband, so make your suit." The gods closed around her, shouting promises, pressing their claims. Earth-shaking Poseidon swung his mighty trident to clear a space about him. "I claim you for the sea," he said. "You are sea-born, foam-born, and belong to me. I offer you grottos, riddles, gems, fair surfaces, dark surroundings. I offer you variety, drowned sailors, typhoons, sunsets. I offer you secrets. I offer you riches the earth does not know, power more subtle, more fluid than the dull, fixed land. Come with me, be queen of the sea." He slammed his trident on the floor, and a huge green tidal wave swelled out of the sea. High, high as Olympus, curling its mighty green tongue as if to lick up the mountain, and poised there quivering, not breaking as the gods gaped. Then Poseidon raised his trident, and the mighty wave subsided like a ripple. He bowed to Aphrodite. She smiled at him, but said nothing. Then the gods spoke in turn, offering her great gifts. Apollo offered her a throne and a crown made of hottest sun gold, a golden chariot drawn by swans, and the muses for her handmaids. Hermes offered to make her queen of the crossways, where all must come, where she would hear every story, see every traveler, know each deed, a rich pageant of adventure and gossip, so that she would never grow bored. She smiled at Apollo and Hermes, and made no answer. Then Hera, scowling, reached her long white arm and dragged Hephaestus, the lame smith god, from where he had been hiding behind the others, ashamed to be seen, and she hissed into his ear, "Speak, fool! Say exactly what I told you to say." He limped forward with great embarrassment and stood before the radiant goddess, eyes cast down, not daring to look at her. He said, "I would make a good husband for a girl like you. I work late." Aphrodite smiled. She said nothing, but put her finger under the chin of the grimy little smith, raised his face, leaned down, and kissed him on the lips. That night they were married, and at the wedding party she finally spoke, whispering to each of her suitors, telling each one when he might come with his gift.